Now, what they've shown is that when they analyze the text of the Qur'an, there's a formula that the Arabs were very tremendous poets. And in order to memorize and perform this poetry, you had formulas. It's like today's rap artists, that you could bring a rap artist on stage and say, make up a song about Muslim-Christian debate. And they could just jump and get into it, and we'd be all amazed. How did they do that? Well, they have certain formulas that they rely on, that they can do this. And so they do this analysis, and they show that these stories actually come from the oral culture. And that's why they don't agree with the Bible, because they come from the Jews and the Talmud, not from the scriptures, but from the Talmud. They come from Christians, not from the scripture, but from their legends and their stories. And they say here, for example, that going to Christianity, heretical Christian sects, when they had to leave Rome and go to the desert, so they were in Arabia, were also a source of much of Muhammad's information. For example, the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. As with and so Ephesus, in the Quran, it speaks about these 7 sleepers, and nobody's sure how many was there. Were there 5? Were there 6? Were there 7? And the story actually is an ancient story from 400 BC. It's not revelation from God. It's an ancient story. It's a story that Christians made up to encourage one another. They were being slaughtered, they were being persecuted, and they made up this story about these young people who refused to obey the king and participate in idolatry. And so they had to run for their lives, and they hid in a cave where they died. And they were dead for hundreds of years. And then they were resurrected. They woke up from sleep. Well, because these stories were in the oral milieu, people were taking them seriously, and they ended up in the Quran. And there are other such stories. But the text says that the story of Adam and Iblis, Adam and the devil, is repeated 7 times in the Quran. And so they do an analysis and do it each one. What are the variants of each of the narrations? And why are there these variants? So when they do the analysis, what they found is all of the variations are at the end. The story always begins the same way, but then it varies at the end. And they realize when you perform, they used to perform these scriptures, you didn't know how much time you have. Like as today, we're on a clock. So given that I only have 10 minutes, I might do the short version. But when I have more time, I'll do the longer version. And so when you're doing this sort of poetry, you need the ability to vary your time on the fly. And that's what they found in an oral culture. When they analyze Homer and analyze other Greek poetry and Arabic poetry, they see these variations for the sake of performance. They go further and they analyze the whole text of the Quran very quickly, looking for the root. How many times do these patterns occur? If it's 20%, that's called a high oral density. The Quran scores 52%. So there's absolutely no doubt from this analysis that the Quran was never initiated as a written text. It was initiated as an oral performance.